The day I met Roger. The first time I met Roger would have been when I first moved to Kilmore. I can't remember, the horse Wellcast might have been one of those horses he had. And yeah, he was just for Kilmore, he was just a lovely guy. You know, he was quiet, he was polite, and which was a bit of a contrast to a lot of the trainers in Kilmore at the time. Yeah, but just a very nice, pleasant person to talk to.
I first met him when I was working for Maxine Brain as a young vet, and we went out, I think we might have gone out to his place to go or something, and Roger did a lot of breakers out in Lancefield, and he was always the man of patience with the horses. He had a very good reputation as a breaker, and anything you went out there, you knew they'd be well handled and well looked after, and yeah, he truly does, or did love horses and dogs, cats.
When Roger first came up here, he did move out to Lancefield and then moved into town around the corner. I suppose it was a retirement thing to come to Kilmore and be closer to family. Yeah. Roger was one of the quieter trainers. He was a real gentleman. He was probably one out of the box, really. He was a gentleman, and he got involved with the club. He got involved with most of the trainers in some way, in a friendly way, and he was always known to say a kind word about most people. He was a gentleman, really. He had a very good success rate at taking horses that had been previously trained by other people, and won many more races with them. Yes, he's a very good horseman.
Definitely family. Yeah, no, I still miss him. Roger was around the stables. He'd do anything you asked him to do. Nothing was ever a trouble. But he also was a very good teacher in, you know, he'd say, oh, gee, I haven't seen anyone put that on like that before. And I'd say, well, how would you do it? And he'd be able to show you, but he wouldn't say that you should do it his way. He'd just say that there was another way, or he'd be happy to watch you do it your way for a few days and say, oh, we could do this. Or, you know, he was quite good at, he just fitted in. He fitted into our place like he was, like Pete said, a father figure for both of us, I guess, in a way. But he loved our horses and our dogs like they were his. Like he was, we had a little pony, and he got him going on the long reins, and so we could put him in the cart. And our older dog Lexi, he taught, how many things would he have taught her? Like she can do a multitude of tricks because Roger spent his time teaching Lexi things. It was really good.
He's very humble. You know, I could have a bad day, and he'd always put a light patch to fix it up. You know, he'd say something kind, and you know, and lots of times we'd travel and we'd go to the races together. In the later times when Neat couldn't come because she was working, and I'd drive a shocker race, you know, and he'd come home and he'd say, look, I can think of 3 really good things you did in that drive, you know, and he'd take, that was Roger, you know, is incredible. He was never one to, you know, he was the type of person who wouldn't badmouth anybody. You know, he wouldn't criticise somebody. He might give me some advice not to deal with that person, but he wouldn't bag them. And he was quite a unique character in that respect. And as I said, he was very supportive. He would not only involve with horses with us, you know, he'd help me fence, we'd weld together, we'd do concreting, wouldn't we? We'd just do all that sort of stuff together. So he was very much a father figure.
Witness at our wedding?
Yeah, of course. At our wedding, he was the witness, and we only had a couple of guests, and Roger was one of them, and his wife, naturally. But so we became a part of his family in a roundabout way, and we've sort of stayed in contact with his family even after he's passed away. They make contact.
At this point in time, if he knew that we were doing this today, he'd be saying, "Oh, we shouldn't have a race named after me. That there's no need." You know, like he was always humble, always, just. He would have been secretly, I'm sure, pleased, but never would have thought that it was something that he would have, you know, deserved or something, which was just totally untrue because he was a very, very giving person.
Yes, once again, he wouldn't say anything bad about anybody, and I think most of the trainers here at the time enjoyed his company, and he was just, I suppose, a little bit special in that respect because he wasn't as rough around the edges as Starlight Josh. Yeah, he won sires.
Yeah. Won a sires, won a 2-year-old sires final, won a 2-year-old Breeders' Crown final, 2-year-old Trotter of the Year. Yeah. South Australian Derby. He was one of the first horses to win, and he won a 4-year-old Breeders' Crown. So he was. You'd go around. Roger was. Everything was immaculate, and you'd go around to their little place when they moved in, really retired and moved into their little place around the other side of Kilmore. And in his garage, he still had the rugs hanging, and they were like pristine. The satin rugs were hanging off the rafters in his garage of the 2 Breeders' Crown wins. He had a revivalist won a youthful stakes at only her 5th start. Well cast, he won a heap of races with him. Yep. So, but Josh, he always talked about Josh. His statistics, like he had not a bad strike rate really, and like Pete said, he took on a lot of horses that other people didn't win with, and he might have only won 1 or 2, but he knew how to get him going.
He certainly enjoyed being here. He was a bit closer to some of the families here. And he was well liked by the trainers, and I think he enjoyed the company of horse people out on the track. It can be a bit lonely when you've got your own farm and you're just working a horse. So in here there was people to meet. He was very close with Michael Scandalera. He knew Michael from the Gippsland days also. Mikasa. Yeah. So some of the people he used to know in harness racing moved to Kilmore as well, and I think that made the transition a little bit easier. He probably wasn't as rough as some of the guys that used to train here, but we had a horse called Eisenhower, yes, and he won a number of races, 10 or 11 races, 12 races, and he loved that horse as well, and he had a history of breaking down, and every time he'd come back he'd say, "No, I don't think he's not going to make it this time." He'd come out and he'd win another 3 or 4 races each season, and so he was a good horse. And he was a great supporter of us, and certainly a great supporter of the horses. It's nice to remember the people who are very special to this town. There's been a lot of people who are very special in this town, and Roger's one of them. Yeah, the older guys used to talk about the great numbers of horses that were trained here. As I said earlier, there was a massive number of horses, and the colourful characters they were. You're talking about the Shins and the likes, and Kilmore must have been an amazing place. So when we got here, there were still fairly large numbers, but it's whittled away a lot over the last 20 years. But it's a great place, Kilmore.